Welcome to Lykken on Lending, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of the mortgage industry. Your host, David Lykken, bringing you the latest insights, trends, and updates from the world of mortgages. Whether you're a seasoned industry veteran or just getting started, this show is your go-to source for all things mortgage. Let's get started. This is Lykken on Lending. Now your host, David Lykken.
Folks, we're excited to bring you a really interesting topic. We're talking about crypto and digital assets. Our guest today, Manny Alicandro, is the founding partner and member of the firm, Alicandro Law Firm. Manny focuses on compliance, risk management, regulation, control, surveillance, supervision, and governance. He has worked in diverse leadership roles in alternative asset management, such as banking, management, consulting, electronic markets, trading, technology, and regulation. This guy's a fountain of information, which is why he's a frequent industry guest speaker, panelist, and webcaster, also a published author. You'll find him on Newsmax and many other networks. Manny was general counsel at a hedge fund, trading, technology, and asset management firm. He led all strategic and technical legal initiatives and was involved in incubating a fintech and regtech company. Previously, he was the director of financial services, risk regulatory practice. Manny has a BA from New York University, a Master of Science from Pace University, a JD from the New York Law School, and an MBA from MIT. This guy is amazing, and we're so excited to have him as our guest. So, Manny, welcomes to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So good to have you here. And I got to ask the question, how did you make the journey as an attorney into the world of crypto as you have?
It's a great question. So I received my MBA from MIT Sloan School of Business and Sloan School of Management. And I used to take the train or the bus every couple of weeks from New York City to Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I had opened up an account at Coinbase. And I was just kind of messing around with the account in terms of I deposited some money in the account. And I was like, wow, how does this work? So this was very early on in 2016. And I was just figuring out how to move money into my account and then what I could buy with that money. And I came across Bitcoin and bought a decent amount of Bitcoin at the time. It was pretty low, the price, and was fascinated about Bitcoin in terms of what is Bitcoin? Why is anybody interested in it? And really, what's there about Bitcoin that I should know? So went to a couple of people in the industry and that I reached out to, just randomly hit up people on LinkedIn or emailed people. And I said, what's this deal about Bitcoin? And why is everybody so fascinated with it? Now you got to understand, Bitcoin only was out for a couple of years at that point in time, right? Nobody really invested in Bitcoin. It was very hard to buy. So it was great to go to Coinbase to have that ability to buy it because other people had to buy it through some more difficult means. They initially said to me, hey, Bitcoin is great, but it really deals with the blockchain. So you have to be careful kind of with that in terms of people might see the transaction. So there was some confusion, the way it was explained to me initially, about the immutability of transactions on the blockchain. Then I also met some people who were like, wow, Bitcoin's really bad. There's a lot of money launderers, illicit drug dealers, people buying stuff on the dark web and the black market utilizing Bitcoin. And then they said, well, but at the same time, even though it's going on, blockchain's awesome. So wait a minute, is blockchain great or is blockchain not? So what's going on here? Then it ultimately led me to the white paper by Satoshi, and who is this individual who still to this day remains to be a mystery of who this individual is, he or she. And this individual wrote the white paper, which is just amazing in terms of explaining Bitcoin and kind of putting Bitcoin on a map. And then from that point, I just became more and more interested in crypto in terms of how crypto traded. And then I got into later on into Ethereum, Litecoin, and other cryptocurrencies. And then when I was at MIT, I took a blockchain course as well. That was a great course, but I had known a decent enough amount about blockchain. So the course really just helped me learn a bit more. All at the same time, I was thinking about, well, how can I work in this space as a lawyer, right? Because this right now is a wild, wild west. I'm going to Coinbase. I put money on Coinbase. I'm not 100% certain at the time, David, what licensing even Coinbase had. What am I buying? How am I buying it? What kind of protections are there from cyber? Can someone hack into my account? Is it a currency? Is it a security? I mean, all these questions that somewhat still remain unanswered today. But I think we're better along that road, down that road, and that path today in terms of defining what things are, at least knowing what things aren't. Then it was just some massive confusion. So I figured, let me learn more about this, working with people who've been in this space for quite some time. And then maybe I could somewhat pivot my law practice, which was pretty much dedicated to capital markets. So I had worked in-house for JP Morgan covering electronic trading globally, agnostic of market. So it was, as markets moved, there was trading that was on a floor in a pit that eventually moved to electronic. That was something that under my area, my remit. Before that, I worked for a hedge fund and also worked doing some management consulting for Peter in a regulatory space. And then really pretty much the job that really defined my career at the time and kind of pivoted me in the direction I'm in now is I worked for the NASDAQ stock market for over 10 years. And it was just a great job with great people. And I learned a lot about how things trade, what should trade. And we really moved to the next gen, right? So kind of where trading is now, the SpaceX IPO a couple of weeks ago, right?
Amazing.
No exchange could have done that 10, 15 years ago, right? I was at NASDAQ when we had done the Facebook IPO. And unfortunately, public information here, there were numerous problems with that IPO.
Yeah.
And it was, again, NASDAQ was competing with the New York Stock Exchange, which at the time was even less electronic than today. The New York Stock Exchange is pretty much 100% electronic. They have floor brokers to facilitate any issues. NASDAQ really has the same thing. It's just NASDAQ doesn't have a floor. It just has the market center in Times Square, New York, where they do the stock market opens and closes. It's really effectively a TV studio. But there was always a battle between a new listing would go on a New York Stock Exchange or go on NASDAQ. And when the Facebook IPO came out, it was a big deal because it was just a massive IPO, and retail interest was there. Retail investors wanted a piece of that IPO. And I think when it came out, it was like $14. You could imagine is trading in the 600s right now. It's amazing stock. And if you look at SpaceX in terms of the number of shares and just the market value in the trillions, it's insane. And it's amazing to think that a couple of years ago, when you look at the Meta Facebook IPO, there were issues because of the size of it. It just kind of clogged up the market and clogged up the pipes. And the Facebook IPO went off seamlessly.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. So I worked there for quite some time. I learned a lot about trading. I learned a lot about markets. And I always thought, well, how can crypto effectively trade like a stock on NASDAQ? Is there a way eventually that this product, Bitcoin or anything else, could ultimately trade similar to a Facebook or a SpaceX?
Yeah. One of my favorite stories is a friend of mine who was working with someone that he used to play poker with. And they used to do all their bets with this thing called Bitcoin because it's worthless. Let's just, like nickels, dimes, dollars, and let's just play with Bitcoin. His poor Bitcoin portfolio is worth over $35 million today from this garage Bitcoin gains. It's just amazing what some things will happen. It'll be interesting to see where SpaceX goes. And, you look back, I remember going when the Facebook IPO came out at $14, and I was going, man, you see where it's at today. You go, pay attention to that. That's how wealth is created, a lot of it. Let's get into the topic. We could go so many directions with you, and I just so thoroughly met you. And we should tell our audience, we met at the Mindset Summit in Las Vegas that Pavan sponsors, and we were sitting in the green room, and you were going to go on stage and talk about it. And I got a chance to meet you, and I asked, can I interview you? You're so fascinating. And what was so amazing about that, it was lightning in a bottle when I first met you, Manny, because we had a room full of all the people that are going to be going on stage. They're sitting around, they're all having their independent conversations. And there's a camera in front of me. Pavan Agrawal from Angel AI had a camera in there with his crew. And they said, yeah, we'll film this thing. We'll do it. And by the time we didn't get very far into that, pretty soon all the conversations in the room started shutting down and started listening to what you had to say as I was interviewing you. And there was just such a good flow in our conversation that by the time we were done, Pavan's CPA that does his accounting and his tax work was passing us notes. Ask Manny this, ask Manny. So listeners, you're in for a treat. We're going to start basic. We're going to go down the beginning, and then we're going to go up from there. Manny will be coming back and breaking this down for us a lot more in the future. But let's start with, what is crypto?
Great question. So crypto is effectively an alternative currency, right? So it's something of value that is created, and it is related to either a some type of protocol, some type of blockchain, right? So Ethereum trades on the Ethereum blockchain. So how these different cryptocurrencies came out, they came out via some type of offering. And it's real interesting in terms of how we've derived into a lot of these crypto products came out very controversially. Like Bitcoin just kind of came out, right? And there was an adoption. And there's always a question about, like we talked about an issuance, an initial public offering of stock. We talked about SpaceX or Facebook. Securities could be privately offered, where I could buy securities from you, or you could buy them from me, with different lawyers involved, through some type of exemption. If you have an exemption from registration, right? So securities either private or public. So you look at the SpaceX IPO. The private SpaceX was offered in the private markets for many years. So a lot of people became super rich when the IPO went off, because they bought SpaceX for a much cheaper price than the IPO price, and then the first trade in the aftermarket when the IPO was done, because they bought it privately, right? So you have private versus public. Well, in the crypto space, some of these cryptocurrencies just kind of came out. So there was a lot of controversy in terms of, especially with Ethereum, is Ethereum a security? Is Ethereum commodities, Ethereum not a security? And the SEC really pretty much didn't pursue any avenues against Ethereum, against Bitcoin, right? I mean, who would they go against? If Bitcoin was determined to be a security, hypothetically, which it's not, it's a commodity. A court has determined that, and a Commodity Futures Trading Commission and the SEC confirmed that. But let's say the SEC did, hypothetically. How would they approach it? Would they go after Satoshi? Who is Satoshi? Would they send a letter? Would they send some type of subpoena? Who are they going to interview and investigate and do a deposition of? There's no person. So the beautiful thing about Bitcoin versus anything else is it's decentralized. So you have this decentralization, meaning that it's kind of autonomous, right? There's no central facility location. So compare again to SpaceX. SpaceX is Musk, centralization. They're in Texas. They have an office. They have people, a couple thousand employees that work there. Same thing with Meta. They're in California. It's Zuckerberg. It's his team. It's his staff. It's centralized. They have an address. They have a location. People are responsible for different roles, responsibilities. As opposed to something that's decentralized, it just kind of runs on its own. So the way that Bitcoin was set up in a very beautiful way was it's decentralized. And then the miners, individuals who actually get a piece of Bitcoin, a very small incremental piece, they are the gatekeepers. They are the guardians at the gate to determine that Bitcoin is functioning properly, right? And those individuals who mine, and it takes a lot of computer power and a lot of electricity. And that's why there's a big knock on Bitcoin in terms of, my God, when you mine Bitcoin, it's draining all these resources. And some countries internationally have banned Bitcoin because of that. So effectively, Bitcoin's decentralized. Other cryptocurrencies, kind of not so much, but followed along that trajectory, and they were issued. And then now they're listed on an exchange like a Kraken or a Coinbase or a Gemini or one of those exchanges. And you could go to that exchange and you could buy it like you would buy SpaceX. So you deposit money in an account, let's say a Coinbase. Let's use Coinbase as an example, probably the biggest crypto exchange, and they're effectively global now. They're clearly in every state, including, and they're in Puerto Rico, but they're global. Because say you go to a Coinbase and you put in $1,000, right? You can buy whatever crypto products are offered listed on Coinbase. So there's a process that these tokens, and I mentioned it was a little kind of fuzzy how they actually came out, but they've adopted certain standards that Coinbase and the other exchanges require to list on that exchange. Like Facebook was listed and SpaceX listed on NASDAQ. Similarly, these tokens, cryptocurrency, are listed on Coinbase. So I deposit $1,000 in Coinbase, and I have $1,000 now in Coinbase. Great. What do I do? Well, what's beautiful about crypto is when you get access to the app or the website, it's real time. It's 24/7. So unlike the stock market, which trades traditional markets, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time to 4 p.m., we do have a pre-market, 8 a.m. to 9:30.
I was going to ask about that.
We have a pre-market. Technically, it's 4 a.m. It tries to coordinate with the Asian markets. So the markets really move Asia to Europe to the U.S. That's the traditional flow. And then we have a post market, right? So the post market goes after the close, and it's until 8 p.m. So it goes 4:30 to 8 p.m. So essentially, you have these other platforms out there where you can trade overnight. They're very limited right now, but you can on Robinhood and other platforms. You could trade overnight. And again, that's to correspond with trading in Asia. It used to be that you would have to have a stock listed in the U.S., listed in Hong Kong, listed in Japan and other exchanges. But it could be Facebook, but listed in multiple exchanges globally because those foreign investors, foreign traders didn't have access to U.S. markets. Now there's a bit of a convergence. So you could have a foreign investor coming right into Robinhood. It's pretty awesome. So getting back to Coinbase. So now I have $1,000 and I say, I really want to buy Bitcoin, but oh my God, Bitcoin is $60,000. Bitcoin's actually at the lowest it's been.
Yeah.
And you only need to realize $60,000 sounds like a lot, but it was well over $100.
Yeah.
Right. $100,000. So it was much higher than that. Right. So now it's at a deep discount, but say I don't have $60,000. Right. And you really can't margin. You can't put money in or stock in to Coinbase and then borrow against it. It's kind of difficult. You could with certain crypto products, but it's different than a traditional brokerage account. Sorry?
Is that because those stocks can be so volatile?
Absolutely. And they're not, that's a great point, David. And they're also not margin eligible. So there's rules around what particular stocks are margin eligible. And there's a lot of stocks that trade over the counter, OTC, bulletin board, whatever. You can't trade those on margin. Absolutely right, because they're very risky. So crypto's clearly in that category. But the great thing about crypto is I could leg in, I could dollar cost average. So if Bitcoin is 60,000, I have 1,000 in my account at Coinbase, I could buy $800 worth of Bitcoin. Obviously, it's expensive because the commissions are high. Right. Candidly. So you have to really look into the details in terms of the fine print, in terms of if I'm going to buy $800 worth of Bitcoin, what is is my commission $300 on that? It's not worth it, right? I should wait to save to buy a little more. But technically, you can buy small amounts of crypto. You could buy you could buy Ethereum, or you could buy Ripple XRP. Ripple is a great company. I think it's terrific.
XRP, yeah.
XRP, and I'm not promoting it.
I know you're not promoting, but
it's just a great protocol, and in terms of their technology, and you could buy their XRP, and their XRP is around $1, for example. So that if you have $1,000, you might be able to buy almost 1,000 XRP, and then it trades 24/7. You have access to the app, and you have access to the market data. So you watch it trade. There's graphs. There's all different capabilities and metrics. So it works the same way as stocks, traditional stocks.
It works very similar to stocks. So it's something but the thing is, when you hear the price of a single Bitcoin, a lot of people, even at this reduced price, which is a bargain, in my opinion, again, we don't give investment advice here, anything, so go do your own research on it, is what I'm trying to say. But the fact that it's available on a fractionalized basis, you can buy in a percentage of one share. And that's some of the opportunities you're talking about. Fascinating. Well, let's get over to talking about why these are so important. Yeah, there's a lot of attention going on this right now. Why are they so important?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? That's the $1 million question. And it's debatable. Some people think they're not important. There are people who are completely anti Bitcoin and think Bitcoin is a pet rock. Yeah. Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of JP Morgan, everybody knows, a couple of years ago when he was at Davos, he called Bitcoin a pet rock, right? There are other people who call it fad. Yeah. It's been around for quite some time. Yeah. And now there's a lot of these exchange traded funds, exchange traded products. So you can buy something through your account at Goldman or Schwab or anywhere, Robinhood, and you could buy an exchange traded fund that owns Bitcoin. So you don't have to buy Bitcoin directly. Now you could buy Bitcoin in the main market. Why these products have come about and why they're important, we could focus first on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is effectively many things, right? It could be a store of value. And what a lot of people who effectively, if you look at the political lens, you have people that are liberal, right. You have people that are conservative. Right. And then you have people that are independent. And you have really on both sides, you have this libertarianism. And libertarianism to me is some individual who believes in individual liberties and freedoms. There's collectivism and there's individualism. So libertarian is someone who believes in, I don't want the government to impede on my liberties, right? Obviously, you need a police, you need emergency fire and medical and all that, right? You need emergency medical services in terms of ambulance, all that, and you need some kind of order. But effectively, from a libertarian perspective, you need minimal government. And a lot of people that really got turned on to Bitcoin early on were these people who were somewhat anti-establishment. I don't necessarily mean burn down the government, take a wrecking ball to the government. But what they did was beautiful. Is they've analyzed a lot of European countries, and European countries are awesome. European countries are fantastic culturally, the food, the tradition, the language, amazing.
Yes.
But economically, they've just been the worst examples
Yeah.
of capitalism, right? You have some of the highest rates of unemployment and inflation that you've seen in history in these European countries. And every time there's a problem, who comes in is the ECB, is European Central Bank.
Right.
They come in and they kind of tweak what they feel they need to tweak. And who gets hurt by this is the people in that country, whether it's Italy or
Right.
Greece or Portugal or Spain, time and time and time again. So the currency in those countries, and now it's the euro, gets impacted by what's happening in that country clearly in terms of unemployment, in terms of inflation, in terms of everything else. And then what happens? The ECB, the central bank, comes in and messes things up, usually making it worse because the central bank really is trying to help out the government and not the people. So the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is there's no central bank. As I mentioned earlier, it's decentralized. So it's a complete opposite of a central bank. We're talking about something decentralized. So technically, the way it was issued is that it's anti-inflationary, right? So it is moving more like a traditional asset right now because I mentioned earlier, there's securities that hold Bitcoin. So it's more aligned to traditional economic indices than it had been in the past. So it's not completely disconnected, but effectively it moves the way it moves, and there's no central bank determining it. That's the first thing.
That's the second independence.
Yeah, it's a real powerful thing that there's the first time in history that there's some type of currency or something that's trading that's not tied to a country or a central bank. That these people in some building are making the determination about how you and me live and about the value of our money.
They're not doing that at all. I mean, I can go into that. It's so good that there's a lot of concerns and misconceptions about this. When you look at the massive adoption or the lack thereof, or is it based on suspicion, concern? Is this real? Is this a fad? I think we've seen so many hyped up articles on both sides of this. When will this come to a point of mass? First, will it? And if so, when?
Tremendous questions. Firstly, I think that depending on who you talk to, adoption right now is 5 to 10%. So you have to think, oh my God, what will that be like if it's like an earthquake, exponential. You go from 10, 15, 20, 30. Wow. Right. You have to marry that and juxtapose that with the fact that the circulation of Bitcoin is going to stop at 22 million. So that's another thing that's great about Bitcoin. Not only is it anti-inflationary, not only is there no central bank, there's going to be a limited supply, which means in a couple of years, it's going to be harder and harder to buy Bitcoin. What does that mean? Well, that means the price is going to shoot up because if something has a limited supply, and to your point, when you get more demand, higher demand, limited supply, price is going to go straight up. Now, why hasn't there been mass adoption? Because I think countries like China want to control what the people in China do. The CCP wants to control. Yep. And all we're talking about is the fact that Bitcoin's on its own. It can't be controlled. No government can control Bitcoin. There was a couple of different studies done. I want to mention one of them. There was a project called PESA, and it was done in Africa. And people in Africa, they weren't able to use currency because the hyperinflation. So there's a perfect example of Africa, a particular country in Africa, let's say, where there is corruption, Ivory Coast, or you could pick the country. And due to this corruption, so the leaders in those countries are extremely wealthy. The countries are very wealthy in terms of resources, but the people there are very poor. That just happens time and time again. And the United Nations can't do anything about it, unfortunately, right? This is just what we know and what we've seen, right? The USA for Africa when we had that big initiative in the 80s with the song and all the money we raised. I'm not sure the impact of that money because it didn't flow. It went to the leaders in those African countries and it didn't flow down to the people. So that's problem one with this corruption. Problem number two is there's hyperinflation, right? So the inflation literally is so volatile, it could move over a weekend. So you got paid on a Friday, your paycheck could be worth a third of its value
as well.
Exactly, on Monday, right? There's no stability, right? Because of this corruption and manipulation, because there's a central bank that's beholden to the leader of that country. So in M-Pesa, all these people were, first of all, were unbanked. So it was hard for them to open up a bank account, right? Because you couldn't go to a bank. They might not have various forms of ID. So, but they did have cell phones, which was awesome. So they all had cell phones and they were able to go to a gas station and buy minutes on their cell phone. Well, what this project came up with is they said, let's create this cryptocurrency just in a use case and let these people be able to buy the M-Pesa with money at the gas station the way they buy minutes on a cell phone. So the gas station would sell this. Now, these people who were completely beholden to the government in terms of healthcare, in terms of food, in terms of anything, now communally, they took care of each other. They took care of their elders. They took care of their medical needs. They managed this bank account effectively, but it was M-Pesa. It wasn't in the dollars of that country. But they had control over their lives because the money was stable. When they would put in whatever their currency for their country was, they knew they were getting a certain value of M-Pesa. That value of M-Pesa stayed the same. So there was no volatility, to your point, up or down in terms of value of that currency. And they didn't have to go to a bank. They could just use it peer-to-peer via phone. They would tap a phone or whatever. So that's just a beautiful example that I'm very excited to share. And there's a lot of use cases like this, but there's a lot of papers, academic papers written about this, how crypto has solved problems in countries that have poverty issues, have issues with people unbanked. And it gave all this power to these people who were never empowered. And it just created this whole different ecosystem. People could lend each other money. They knew a friend or family needed money. They could send it to them, kind of like the way we use a Zelle or a Venmo or PayPal, right? You could just send money to people. You have to go to a wire at a bank. It was the same kind of deal. And it's just a tremendous example of the power of what could be done with crypto. And that was just a specific use case for M-Pesa. You could also, David, look at cross-border transactions. So let's say I'm a manufacturer of furniture, modern furniture, and I design it and I send it. My factory is in China, and I give them a design. They make it in China. They put it in a container and they ship it to me. And then when I get it at port, I sell it. For me to do that transaction, it would involve multiple international money orders.
Wow.
There's conversion issues between the US dollar and the Chinese yuan, right? I have to get it to them. I have to mail to them, whatever. By the time they get it, volatility in the value of what I initially engaged them to do, say it's, $20 today. By the time they get it, it might be $22. It might take 2 to 3 weeks. Then when they get it, so now I owe them more money and I'm playing catch up. Then by the time they get it, they have to cash it as well. So a transaction, which if I could send you crypto or I could send you something similar to Zelle or Venmo, it's instantaneous.
Yeah.
Could take 3 to 4 weeks. But if I sent them Bitcoin, then they have it instantaneously and they know whatever the value was of the currency, we could do the equivalent value in the Bitcoin. Boom, I send it over and we're done. There's no issues. They get it. They could start processing. I could get my furniture pretty quickly, and there's no issues with the money order or when they got the money order, relying upon these third parties. So if you look at the Chinese government, why doesn't the Chinese government want that? Because they want to control the process. They might not know that I sent Bitcoin to someone.
Yeah.
Because they don't see it unless they're surveilling that blockchain. But they want to know everything that people in China do and maybe everything that we do. So they're completely against that because they want everyone or any government, my perspective, that doesn't want to adopt crypto and different kinds of platforms like Bitcoin. They really want to be involved in the process. They don't want to obviate themselves out because they're middle people. They're middlemen and women, and middlemen and women, they make money.
Yep.
And they make money from timing. They make money from fees. They make money for whatever. And also with a government like China, they want to know what people do from a espionage spying type of thing, unfortunately. So they want to surveil people. And through Bitcoin or other cryptos, you have this ability to do things pseudo-anonymous. It's not completely anonymous, but it's better than me wiring somebody something, or me on WeChat, which is the Chinese Facebook. You could use that for transactions. You could send people money on WeChat. They have loans. They have all these really interesting products out of China, but it's entirely surveilled. So no one ever wants to use it because they don't want anything that they do monitored and surveilled by the government in China.
Interesting. This is so fascinating. As I'm sitting here looking at my notes down here and all the things I wanted to cover with you, it's laying a good, fascinating foundation for what are the possibilities of what we can be doing with this. That's where I go as we start looking at the what this is going to do, create a level playing field for so many countries, for those that are disenabled or being blocked out of working out of our current financial systems, whether they be artisans in different parts of the world that can trade their goods and have it be instant. There's just so many values to this thing. So why your interest? You're a successful attorney. So why are you so interested in this?
Because I love to see people empowered. My family, my grandparents came from Italy. My dad, on my mom's side, my dad came from Italy, and we had struggles growing up. And fortunately, I've had a great career. I've had a great life by their hard work, but they struggled. And the reason that they struggled is not because they weren't smart. It was not because they lack hustle. It was because the opportunity was not there, right? And I feel that it's always about opportunity. If there's opportunity, you, me, Pavan, anybody could do anything. Sky's the limit. But when the government limits opportunity, that's a problem. And I feel that, like you talked about, what utilizing something like Bitcoin, it creates opportunity, or crypto, that otherwise doesn't exist. It creates opportunity to people in countries that don't have that ability to take care of themselves. There's a reliance upon the government, right? And the government wants that. That's what I'm talking about in terms of the collective. The government doesn't believe in individualism. These governments that are controlling, that if they're military leadership, whatever they have, they believe in collectivism. You do what I tell you to do. Why? Because I told you to do so. Your opinion doesn't matter. You don't have your liberty is that you're lucky you're alive, because I can kill you when I want to, or take you over, throw you in prison, whatever, and throw away the key. Right? So this is all about liberty and empowerment. And you're right. Maybe an artist wants to ship something to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and wants to get paid. And my God, how difficult would it be to get paid on a multinational transaction? But if you got paid in Bitcoin or crypto, it's so much easier.
Direct.
Right. The big problem right now is, let's use an example. So say I wanted to buy a Tesla and I wanted to buy it with Bitcoin, right? If I bought it with Bitcoin, I could go to Elon Musk and say, okay, the Tesla's 100,000. Here's 1.5 Bitcoin, or 1 3/4 Bitcoin. And he said, great. But for me to do that, David, it's a taxable event.
Right.
Bitcoin statutorily right now, legally, is considered property, like a house, like an apartment, right? So you have a capital gains perspective. So if you bought that Bitcoin that now is 60 at 40,000, you have a $20,000 capital gain. So when you use the Bitcoin that you're holding transactionally, like you would use a dollar, like you would use as currency, credit card, debit card, it's a taxable event on top of that. So it's kind of crazy to think, why would I want to use a Bitcoin, which I think might still go up in value, if I have to pay taxes on it to sell it? I'm not selling it to you or selling it to gain a profit. I'm selling it to buy the Tesla. But yet the way the government views it present state is that I'm selling that Bitcoin, and therefore, great, I pay my sales tax, whatever. I get the Bitcoin. I'm excited. I got a Tesla. I use the Bitcoin to buy it. I'm driving a Tesla out of the showroom. Great. But guess what? I have to now tell my accountant that I sold that Bitcoin. And then April 15th comes the next year, and I've got to fill out these papers and whatnot. So what I want the government to do is to create an exemption for transactions. So if you use Bitcoin transactionally, maybe you don't pay a capital gains, or maybe you get some kind of capital gains forgiveness or whatever. But I'm worried that the full power of Bitcoin to use it transactionally is not been unleashed because of the the tax
When
issues.
when is that going to happen, do you think, Manny? When is the unleashing going to happen?
I think it's going to take probably the next, if JD Vance or Marco Rubio or someone like that gets elected, I think it could happen in that administration. I think Trump has done a lot. He has 2 bills. He got 1 bill passed called the Genius Act, which is for stablecoin. There's another bill called Clarity, which I hope will get passed. That is essentially talking about the Securities and Exchange Commission and Commodities Futures Trading Commission working collaboratively. For years, these government agencies would fight each other. It was a turf war.
Yeah.
There's a security. No, it's a commodity. No, it's a security like a commodity. And commodity like it was just a turf war.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, hey, fellas, both of you should be on the same team. You're on Team Government, Team USA. And the Clarity Act helps with that. And it also helps with unleashing technology because there's a lot of things that are out there that are technology projects that in the past, the SEC or the CFTC said, oh, no, you're issuing a security. Oh, no, you're selling a commodity. But you're really not because it's a technology project that has crypto or whatever related to it. But fundamentally, first and foremost, it's a technology project. So Trump has done a lot. You got to remember when Trump got elected, Bitcoin went to almost all-time high. So Bitcoin is extremely, extremely high under Trump. Trump has done a lot with regard to promoting globally what the benefits are of crypto, signed executive orders, created the reserve, the strategic reserve. So I think a lot of people look at what Trump has done and say, wow, this is unbelievable. He's shown a lot of the benefits of crypto. But I think unfortunately through the economic situation that we've had with regard to some of the numbers economically with inflation and then the war in Iran, it's impacted Bitcoin. So there you go. That goes to my point earlier where the market forces and the market indices that affect the general market are now impacting Bitcoin as well. But I think the Trump administration has done a great job in terms of pushing it as far as it could, getting Bitcoin on the map.
Great.
And then I think the next administration, it'll take some work with members of Congress to either impact taxation, utilizing Bitcoin transactionally, or even
thinking about how to track that.
Making the laws clearer or better. Education. It's all about education, right? Like this whole discussion with you is hopefully educational, informative to people. And I think education is the key to getting more people interested.
Yeah. And they're coming in by the droves. I was at a conference, a Bitcoin conference in Sacramento, some number of months back, and I was overwhelmed with how many people are there. These conference rooms, anything that's having to do with the AI, crypto space, Bitcoin, anything like that, it's just getting overrun. Man, it's so fascinating. I love your enthusiasm for this amazing new product. Is it can best referred to as a product, or is it literally a currency?
Yeah, I think it's a currency. It's an alternative form of currency, and there are people who use it that way and they pay taxes and whatever. There are people who use it transactionally. There are people that I know have bought homes of Bitcoin.
Yes.
They won't sell their Bitcoin. The people who don't sell Bitcoin are called Bitcoin maximalists, and they're called maxis, right? And what they do is they don't sell the Bitcoin. They give their Bitcoin to a bank or something that'll lend them money because they never want to sell it. So they get a loan based upon a valuation of the Bitcoin, and then they use that money to do stuff with it. And then they have to add to the collateral if Bitcoin is pretty volatile, goes down, or they're in better shape and can take more money out when Bitcoin goes up. But yeah, it's a way of life. Some people are totally addicted to it. When I was in Vegas earlier this year, I was at the Bitcoin conference at the Venetian, and I was there last year.
That's what
they said.
That you heard the conference was going on, and you came over. And
they said there was 30,000 people there. 30,000 people. So that's what was rumored. I don't know how many actually showed up, but it was packed, and it was less this year than last year because the price of Bitcoin's been down. But it's a thing. It's a global thing, no doubt.
And they have Europe. It is something that we got to pay attention to. How is this going to impact the mortgage industry? I'm thinking of all our mortgage listeners out there. This is just a great discussion, generally speaking. How do you see this impacting banking, finance, and specifically mortgage lending?
That's a great question as well. I think this whole thing that we're talking about is DeFi, right? So there's this big push with DeFi, with AI in terms of automating these processes, making these processes cleaner, clearer, more transparent. So I think if it does anything, it could make the mortgage industry a lot more efficient and therefore a lot cheaper, right? Because again, you have to think that look at a loan. How many different thumbs and fingers have to touch that loan to approve it?
Involved in it.
Right. And sign off, right? You could create a real streamlined process similar to trading a cryptocurrency or something like Bitcoin. How this actually works on a blockchain, something that is a decentralized, immutable.
Right.
Essentially, it's a massive spreadsheet, right? It's a spreadsheet on steroids. Utilize the same conceptualization of what that is and apply it to the mortgage industry or the housing industry. I mean, another thing too that I've studied in the past is in a lot of countries, title and deeds are very confusing, especially in South America. And there's a lot of these turf wars with people. They're farmers or whatever. My land ends here. No, my land ends here. And the documentation is problematic. We don't know where it is. At City Hall. There could be corruption. There could be fraud. So there was a big push to putting records, land records, on the blockchain. Once they're on the blockchain, no one can change them. It's immutable. It's beautiful. So then that gets rid of these land disputes, lawyers fighting, courts, crazy costs. Now it's cheaper to do it. And then if that's on a blockchain, when you want to buy or sell that property, if those records are already there, you don't have to even worry about a title search. It's all done. So the costs are going to decrease dramatically. Now, a lot of the people involved in the process, they might not make as much money. And I'm sorry that that's the case, but I'm focused. I'm concerned with the consumer, right? I want to see these savings passed on to the consumer. The vendors and those third parties, they could still be in the whole ecosystem, maybe do some other things, or they'll make money. They just won't make as much. But it won't be a barrier of entry in terms of closing costs, in terms of the time it takes to close, in terms of the approvals. I hope the whole ecosystem changes dramatically. It becomes a lot more efficient.
Yeah. Manny, it is so good having you here. I thoroughly enjoyed meeting you. I want to have you back on a regular basis as we continue to break this down. How can people learn more about you? Do you have a LinkedIn page, website? How can we learn more?
Yeah, you could just check me out. They Google my name, Manny, Alicandro comes up. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. You can check me out that way. Please reach out to me, and happy to connect.
Thank you so much for being here, and we'll have you back here soon.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the time, and I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. It's very interesting. We're going to have Manny back for more on this topic as we continue to build a foundation of knowledge that we're going to be sharing through this podcast. I want to say a special thank you to Angel AI for making this podcast possible, as well as for introducing me to amazing people like Manny. And I think you're going to be wanting to come back to hear more. Pay attention for future broadcasts. Have a blessed day. Thank you.
You've been listening to Lykken on Lending. Our passion is to bring you the latest insights, trends, and updates from the world of mortgages. So on this show, if you're a seasoned industry veteran or just getting started, it's your go-to source for all things mortgage. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll be back soon. Take care, and we'll see you next time on Lykken on Lending.